Hi everyone, I'm Theo and welcome to Theo and his pedals. I've taken a little time off from demoing pedals. I've decided to work a bit more on my own music, so actually I've set up a second channel called Theseeyesradiate. I'll put a link down below, and that's kind of what I'm working on. I'm just working on a lot of my own music. So I figured today I just wanted to show you what I'm using in an upcoming EP I'm working on at the moment. Definitely going for a lot of that kind of 80s post-punk, Gothic rock sort of tones, and I'm using my bass 6. So usually I like to use the bass 6 as a bass instrument, but in this case the low end retention isn't that important to me. And in fact, if you listen to bands like New Order or The Cure, who both use bass 6 instruments, you know, a short scale bass with 6 strings with a guitar like spacing between those strings, you'll actually notice the low end is usually covered by either another bass player in the case of The Cure, or synthesizers in the case of New Order. I'm going to show you what effects I'm actually using at the moment. So I'm going to start off with probably the foundational, the always on pedal. I picked this up recently, never used it before. A Boss CH1 chorus. Now, loads of people like the C5, and for bass players, you've got the bass version, bass chorus as well, the C2W, of course. Not a lot of people give a lot of love to the super chorus, but actually I found it to be a much more intense chorus sound, which is actually great for like Gothic rock and post-punk. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it works pretty great on bass so far. I'm going to do a full demo on it so you can hear it. It'll probably be on my Does It Bass channel, where I look at effects that aren't specifically designed for bass. Now, while I'm looking at the Boss pedals, I can't ignore the fact that I have got the Boss Bass Flanger BF2B. Now, in the past, I've used a BF2 and the BF3. It's not so much that I dislike those pedals. I have or had a love-hate relationship with flangers, but I found the BF2B for a good price, and I thought, well, if I want that swirly flanger sound, I can't really go wrong with this. And you'll hear it's got quite a distinctive, what I just typically think of as the classic flanger sound. And of course, this isn't the one that turned me onto flangers, made flangers one of my favorite pedals. the ADA flanger. Now this is probably my favorite flanger of all time. I used to have the smaller pedalboard friendly version and sold it like an idiot. So when I was able to get the original big box at a decent price, I jumped on it. Honestly, for me, sure, it can do the big sweepy stuff, but it just adds this. It sounds almost like a chorus, but also not quite like a chorus. There's extra modulation going on. It's just a really cool sound that I have a hard time turning off when and that's either playing guitar or bass, because it doesn't just sound like that. The way I have it set up doesn't just give that big sweepy effecty sound. It just sounds like you've, I don't know, 80'd up your guitar a bit. I just really love the way it sounds. As I mentioned earlier, the low end isn't much of a concern for me when using bass 6. In fact, one could argue that too much low end could probably get in the way of the actual bass instruments like the synthesizers and an actual bass guitar. So I'm using this WEM Copycat Boost. It is effectively a boost pedal based on the input, the preamp input of the Copycat Echo boxes, basically, if you remember them. But the interesting thing is it's got a frequency knob, which, as you roll it back, cuts the low end. Now, what I like about it is it's not like a range master that sounds like you've just cut the crap out of everything. Even with all the bass rolled off, it's still kind of a natural sound. Now, I don't go that far, but I do shelve it to about 12 o'clock. Cuts out enough of the fundamental without sounding tinny and rubbish, and gives me enough space in the mix for other instruments as well. I recently picked up the Electro Harmonix Canyon, just a really cool multifunctional delay pedal. I know it's Electro Harmonix, so you know you can buy them everywhere in every store, and sometimes it feels like you don't want the most popular and easily available stuff because you kind of want your own thing. But I'll be honest with you, it's got so many different sounds in and secondary functions. Look, for this, I'm using the tape delay setting, but in another EP I'm recording at the moment, I'm using the Deluxe Memory Man setting and something else. I really like using the reverse setting. There's just so many good sounds from a delay pedal that you can pick up relatively cheaply. I picked up one of these recently. Thomann were having like a blowout on them, so I think I paid like £90 in total for this, brand new. It's a Universal Audio Effects Teletronics LA2A compressor. It's not analog, it's taking effectively the same algorithm that they use in their VST, I believe, and just putting it in a pedal. But it's a cool all-round compressor. It doesn't get particularly squishy. It just makes your tone a bit, I guess, bigger sounding. I've got other compressors that do different things and have a bit more color to them, but this is just good if you want to balance out your tone a bit. It's a good place to start. Out of all the pedals I'm using at the moment, this is probably the one I need the least. As I'm recording at home, I can and probably will compress everything afterwards, but I felt it probably just helps with my sloppy playing to keep the notes consistent when they're feeding into the rest of the pedals. The settings I've got here don't sound too obvious when you're listening, but this is the Mr. Black Supermoon. It's a modulated reverb. So you can get really cool, like, for want of a better word, spooky tones, because you've got like a chorus vibrato-y type of modulation mixed in with the reverb. It's a really nice pedal. I've had it for ages. I can't bear to get rid of it, because when you just want something that has that kind of wonky modulation, pushes things out of tune a bit, you just want to add a bit something a bit more interesting, almost slightly discordant in some cases, it's a really good place to go. Of course, the amount of pitch shifting is done by the sway knob, so you can be subtle with it. It can just work as a regular reverb, but where's the fun in that? And finally, I'm using the Origin Effects 64 black panel bass rig. It is based on, I don't know, Dual Showman? Is it? Is it the Dual Showman? It could be. You've got a choice for a well, you've got a lot of choices. I could go into it, but basically it's a Fender style amp modeler for bass. I really like it. Importantly, it has a built-in 2x18 cab sim that's on the DI only, so you can't get it through the 1/4 inch out. To be honest, I don't actually need it. A lot of the demos I heard of it were using this DI out with the cab sim engaged, and I felt it sounded too dark. It made the whole pedal kind of sound a bit muddy to me, which no doubt is authentic to the amp it's trying to replicate, but I like my top end. So actually, this has got a feature that I think most people don't really talk about. This is probably one of the best features on the pedal. On the 1/4 inch out, you have a switch here that can control a horn cut, a virtual horn cut. So think of it as low pass filter. You can switch it off. You can set it to 4K. So you've got a low pass filter at 4 kilohertz or at 2 kilohertz. Now at 4 kilohertz, that is like a lot of bass cabinets. I mean, bass cabinet often a bit higher, but to be honest with you, I would much rather use that 4K switch there than use a built-in cab sim. And that is indeed how I use it and how I'm using it at the moment. It's got a 3-band EQ, but actually on the 1/4 inch out, not only do you have that horn cut switch, you've actually got a low and a high EQ just for that too. So that's a really nice move. If you were using the DI and you were sending the 1/4 inch out to a front of house signal playing live, you actually got an EQ just for what would be going to your bass amp that doesn't affect the DI out. So that's a really cool feature there. So with my signal chain for today, I'm putting the Boss Super Chorus last in the chain, and it's taking stereo outs which are going into my audio interface. I'm putting a bit of compression on the tracks in the DAW and a bit of EQ. Other than that, it's basically how it comes. So, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll get on doing some pedal demos, I guess. And yeah, it'd be great if you could follow me at Theseeyesradiate. Look me up on YouTube, find me on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, all streaming services. I'm really trying to push this stuff. I'm working really hard on it. It would be great if I could get some people following along. You don't need to like the music, but it would be great if you could just listen to it. Have a great week. Hope you're all doing well. Take care of yourselves. Bye.